Good evening. I'm Columbus City Council Member Priscilla Tyson, and I chair Finance, Health, Human Services, and Workforce Development Committees for the City of Columbus. And tonight our hearing is on the 2014 budget from the administration, and we're going to be hearing from the directors or deputy directors from the Department of Finance and Management, the Department of Development, and the Columbus Public Health. Tonight we will review the funding requests for the 2014 budget and from each of those departments. And the City Council is the legislative authority and chief policymaking arm for the City of Columbus. And City Council is empowered by the Charter to exercise control over the expenditures and to adopt the annual operating and capital budgets for the City of Columbus. A proposed general fund budget for 2014 is $796,700,000. Our goal is to pass a budget with public input that represents the best long-term strategic interest for this community and the needs of each of our residents. The Department of Finance and Management provides overall coordination and policy direction for the department's fiscal, human resource, and legislative processing functions. We will also, during this hearing, we will also hear a presentation from the Department of Development for Human Services. The city provides financial assistance and technical services for a variety of human service agencies, which include the homeless, youth programs, disabled, the elderly, child care, food service, refugee and resettlement services, just to name a few. And then finally, we will hear from Columbus Public Health, whose mission is to protect the health of Columbus residents and improve lives in our community. This is achieved by protecting and promoting and monitoring the health of the public by assuring compliance with public health laws, mandates, and regulations, establishing policies to address health issues and emerging health threats, and finally, providing preventive, environmental, community, clinical, and home-based services. And their budget is $28,435,860. The social services contract for this year is $4,973,517. And then the proposed finance budget is $131,907,397. And so with that, we're going to begin to hear from each of the directors or deputy directors of those departments to share their budget for 2014. The first person who will be speaking tonight is going to be Director of Finance and Management, Paul Rakowski. And I want to just mention that this hearing is being taped and will be recorded for rebroadcast on Columbus CTV. And the airtime schedule can be found at www.ctv.gov. And so with that, I am going to let the Director of Finance and Management, Paul Rakowski, to present his budget. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Chair Tyson. Thank you for having us here tonight to talk about our collective budgets. I will start off with the general fund piece of my budget, and as you know, we have a couple internal service funds and a couple other smaller property management funds that I'll go over briefly as well. Our budget funds a total of 296 part-time and full-time employees. The breakdown is 277 full-time and 19 part-time employees. There's a variety of funds that are a part of our budget, and I will point out along the way there are also some other very significant citywide expenses that, although they're budgeted within the Department of Finance, those funds are distributed throughout the city's departments depending on need. In the general fund, the Finance and Management, the Director's Office, this is my office. It includes all of my senior staff as well as the full-time positions that are in construction management, fiscal management, the real estate management, human resources, and some support positions as well. That budget is just a little bit in 2014 that we're proposing a little bit under $6 million. It funds 27 full-time positions. There's a fairly significant percentage change in that budget, but that's due to some transfers in from facilities management, the largest of which is associated with the municipal court and the management services contract that we had in the facilities management division. But since that is still technically a leased facility, the appropriate place for those expenses to be located is in our real estate management office. So that really reflects a transfer of funding and not an increase in funding. Within the Finance and Management Director's office, we also have some larger expenses that are budgeted. The public safety leases are budgeted in the Director's office. Those were at one time budgeted in the Special Income Tax Fund. As the health of the general fund has increased and gotten more vital, we've been able to bring those back from the Special Income Tax Fund to the general fund. Those represent about $1.3 million. We do capital reimbursement for our construction management staff so that they are able to bill around 75%, somewhere in that area of their time back to the capital funds that the projects that they work on are budgeted in. That's a little over $600,000 that we have in the budget for reimbursement from the capital funds. That muni court transfer is $1.4 million. We also have another contract at the municipal court that's tied to our paradigm management contract, almost $400,000. Next Gen, funding for Next Gen is budgeted in the director's office at $500,000. And then we have $100,000 for the Film Commission. There are two new positions that are budgeted, and though these are new positions, they were once housed in the department, but over the course of time, they were either attrited out, and one of these was a layoff that occurred during the recession. It's an energy manager position that we want to bring back. With all the changes in the energy markets, we believe we can save significant dollars and have already saved significant dollars by exploring some of these alternative markets that we can purchase energy. So we believe this position will more than pay for itself. And the other is monies for a design architect. Our construction management office is a very capable office, but it's staffed largely with folks that are degreed, are engineers, various types of engineers, but they're all engineers. We believe having an architect, probably a younger person coming out of school that's interested in working on some of our projects, especially in regard to some of the issues with public art that you and I have talked about, and trying to make sure we incorporate that appropriately into our projects, as well as there's a lot of space planning that we do around the city when we're doing renovations of buildings like City Hall, what we did when we moved folks from the 109 building to vacate that into the Beacon building, and this individual we see as being able to really help us in that effort as well. The next division is the Financial Management Division, and that's the division that consists of our three really budget-oriented units, as well as the purchasing office. So it would be the Budget and Performance Management, Debt Management, and Purchasing office as a part of that division. That budget is a little over $38.3, almost $38.4 million. That budget does go up almost 20%, but that citywide account is included in the Division of Financial Management. That's where that increase largely lies, is in the citywide account, as well as funds to implement what we're calling Phase 2 of the FRAC committee recommendations are also included, and that's why that budget goes up. Outside of that, it's generally a continuation budget. The public defender's contract is budgeted in this division at $1.4 million. Citywide memberships are budgeted in this division. We have the money for the mayor's education initiative is within the citywide account. Our rainy day fund deposit of $7.6 million. The economic development incentive payments are budgeted in this division, and then we transfer those over to the development department when they're needed. Those are nearly $13 million and that represents only 75%. The other 25% is budgeted in the SIT, since these are driven by income tax dollars. Our 27th pay period payment of $2.2 million, and then money for legal claims and settlements that we also budget for in the finance department within financial management. So of that total budget amount, $32.6 million is the citywide account. Our largest general fund division is the facilities management division. Obviously, this is the division that maintains and cleans and repairs and does general upkeep of our city facilities. That's a $15.3 million budget. That budget actually represents a little over 9% decline from the 2013 budget. It funds 77 full-time, 17 part-time employees. We do assume a 4% vacancy credit within this division. There is budget neutrality for utilities across the Department of Finance, even though we're really adding an additional 730,000 square feet of city space that we're responsible for. And this also includes, and one of the reasons that we're able to have that neutrality, the savings from our AEP retail agreement that encompasses about 22.4 million annual kilowatt hours of consumption. That includes recreation and parks and public service, as well as the Department of Finance. We're projecting $1.2 million in savings across all those departments because of entering into that agreement. We did modify that agreement, as you know, recently to purchase 30% green power, and that will result in a 7% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions at the city and move us very close to our goal for reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. There's a general fund piece to the fleet management budget that represents dollars we've set aside for vehicles. It's $4 million. As you know, we've been using funds out of the SIT to fund vehicle purchases that were always historically done out of the general fund. Again, because of the fact that we continue to manage ourselves well and the city continues to move forward, we're able to transfer $4 of the $6 million that we'll probably need for vehicles back into the general fund. So we've included that in the 2004 proposed budget as well. The fleet management division that's funded out of an internal service fund is the largest of all of our divisions, with a budget of almost $33.9 million. Again, this budget does represent, from the 2013 budget as amended, a little over 2%, a 2.4% decrease. Funds 135 full-time and 2 part-time positions. Again, there's a 4% vacancy credit assumed in this budget. It includes $10.4 million for fuel expenditures. That represents a 17% decrease from 2013. Assumes 3 million gallons of unleaded diesel. Again, that's a 9% decrease from 2013. Also have our fueling, parts, service, and preventative maintenance that we provide for over 6,100 vehicles. We have our automotive parts at $4.4 million, $1.3 million in services. Again, those both represent a continued decrease in the need for those expenditures. One, because we're doing much more of the work because of the good training that we've done out at the fleet division in-house, and also the fact that the mayors and councils supporting the mayor's initiatives to replace our fleet in the manner in which we should be replacing our fleet has allowed us to really reduce the amount of maintenance costs in the city's fleet. We're going to incorporate, this projection incorporates 400,000 GGEs, gas gallon equivalents, of CNG usage, and that thereby reduces our fuel expenditures by approximately $1.1 million. There are a couple of adjustments in the budget. $100,000 for what we're calling sort of a CNG marketing, but it's really a market exploration to take a look at what the market is out there for CNG and how we can maximize the amount of CNG that we pump at our stations. As you know, we have 1 station open. There'll be 2 more. one that's ready to begin construction and the other that's in design. So as we get to having additional stations, we want to make sure we maximize the amount of compressed natural gas that we can pump, because the price goes dramatically down with the amount that we can, the more that we can pump. There are two other smaller funds I'll just touch on. One is the Print and Mail Services Fund. Obviously, this supports the operations of the city's mailroom and print shop. These are internal service fund. I want to commend my staff. There's a total of 5 full-time employees in this division, but some of the budget analysts, Jeannie Sprague and Chris Long, my fiscal manager, and worked on a new way to bill under this model and adjusted the billing model. We were always in a condition in this fund where we were not recovering our costs because of their hard work. Now we're in a position where we are recovering our costs fully. Obviously, the largest expense here in this combined budget is for the postage that we pay on mail that we send out. And there is no budget adjustments here. The other two funds that we have, one deals with the maintenance and management of the Jerry Hammond Center. We charge rent to the individual departments that are over at that facility, COWIC, Department of Technology and Recreation and Parks. We use those funds to manage the expenses of the building so that it's revenue neutral for the city. It includes a property maintenance contract with Paradigm. We were able to combine those two contracts for the Muni Court and the Hammond Center. And then also, as I said, the lease revenue that comes in that funds all of this. And then we have a small little piece that comes from the Employee Benefits Fund to fund our insurance, property insurance program. It's a boiler property fund. It supports the insurance brokerage and risk management services for the city's property, the casualty insurance, boiler and machinery, and then aviation insurance. Arthur J. Gallagher is the risk management, is the company that we use. There's a 5% increase in this budget, and it's largely due to the fact that we recently had to rebid those services, and there was an increase. As you know, there's been some issues with the aviation fleet, and some of that got reflected in changes in the rates that we pay for those services. Again, there's no expansions within that fund or that activity area as well. And with that, that ends my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Rakowski. Certainly, looking at your budget, as you mentioned, you're only adding 2 individuals to your staff, and for 2 areas that are important, obviously the energy manager's position and then the architect's position. I'm just looking at where added to your base. Next gen, you have then at, is it $130,000 difference?
Yes, Chair, that was added in order to make up for the difference of the CDBG money that we're able to use in the 2013 budget, but because of issues with the caps in the CDBG budget, we were not able to fund that activity out of CD, so we had to shift that over into the general fund in order to get up to the $500,000 that we funded overall for them in 2013.
Thank you. And then I also know that's in your budget, maybe you mentioned it briefly, but just the $1.3 million that we are now moving out of the general fund to support Experience Columbus. Do you want to talk a little bit about those dollars changing?
At the time that the auditor put his revenue estimate together, since there's only been one change currently to that allocation formula that we use to allocate the hotel, motel, or the bed tax, he included that within his estimate for the general fund. So in order to ensure that those dollars would be available to do the second phase, which is to take the $1.3 million that was left coming into the general fund and redistribute that as well to our partners, we had to conclude that as a general fund expense, and we reserved those monies. There's been a allocation of those that I believe is $700,000 for Experience Columbus, and then $300,000 to the cultural arts and the human services. There is obviously, you worked on that committee, you know there are conditions that are associated with the distribution of those dollars and the change in the formula, but those dollars are available, and I know that work continues to go with our partners to ensure that the commitments that were made to all of us as a condition of moving forward are going to be met.
Thank you. Can you also talk to me a little bit about the commitment from finance in terms of our technology for 2014?
Are you referring to the citywide technology bills? We budget within the finance department what we call direct charges that are charged from the technology department for various some are service contracts, but a lot of it is equipment as well. They have both indirect charges that they budget within their internal service fund that are distributed throughout the departments that are based on their model, their billing model that they have, and then we have more distinct items that are budgeted within the finance department that are charged off against that account in the finance department. Could be software, it could be software license fees, it could be additional computers or other types of equipment that would not qualify for capital funding.
Thank you. Well, I'm pleased to, as you're sharing your budget, certainly the importance of us being green and also ensuring that, looking at the fleet management, which is the largest division, that we have certainly decreased our fuel cost in that area. And so I appreciate that within this budget, as well as I'm excited about this $100,000 that can be used for a new initiative to analyze the business processes of the growing CNG infrastructure. And could you talk a little bit more about that again for me, please?
Sure, Chair Tyson. As we begin to move into becoming really a major player in the provision of compressed natural gas in the region, as you know, there's one other station, a couple other stations, one in Dublin and one up at the Solid Waste Authority. Both the Solid Waste Authority site has been a fairly unreliable site. So we will have a major presence in the region in regard to the provision of the compressed natural gas. At the Groves Road Station, because of some of the grant dollars that we used as a part of that project, there was a requirement that the public be able to fuel at that site, and that site was designed in a manner to allow the public to do that. The other two sites, we have not yet made a decision as to whether we will do public open fueling, but we're quite convinced that we are going to do other governmental fueling and perhaps enter into agreements with private sector employers that whose fleets are being moved over to compressed natural gas. So as we move that effort forward, we believe it's important to bring somebody in who has some expertise in those markets that can help us put together a good plan to ensure that we're maximizing the amount of compressed natural gas that we can pump, because the more you pump, we end up becoming different class of user as we pump and purchase more. And when we become that different class of user, it drives those costs even further down from where they are now. And as you know, we save significant money right now in the difference between the price of the compressed natural gas and the fuel. So this is really looking for us to be more efficient, to drive the cost for that natural gas down as low as we can, so that we can continue to save money within the general fund and use those very precious resources for other neighborhood efforts and other services that we provide.
Thank you. And lastly, can you just speak on the dollars that are going to be put into our rainy day fund in this budget? Thank you.
Of course, I appreciate you asking that question, Chair Tyson, because you know we both share in the desire to replenish our rainy day fund and get that fund back up to the level that we all believe it should be at. As you know, we reached our $50 million goal early, council and the mayor committed to a new goal of reaching a goal of $75 million in the fund by the end of 2018. We are going to make a $3 million deposit this year and combine it with the 7.6, so we'll have over 10.6 million that we'll deposit between this year and next. That will bring the projected balance of in the fund by the end of next year to $64 million, which obviously puts us way ahead of our schedule. We're trying to shoot for a goal of approximately 10%. And I'm quite sure that when we get to the $75 million, our budget will probably be a little bit higher than it is now, and we may need to keep moving that forward. I will point out that over the course of time, and you know this well, when we first dipped into the rainy day fund to when we finally passed the income tax, we spent over $90 million out of our rainy day fund. And there were a couple of very large one-time deposits that came from our relationship with the Solid Waste Authority. One was based on pollution tax credit. The other was a upfront payment to us that instead of the payment that was supposed to be made over the course of time. Those will never happen again. They're off the table. They're gone. So without those two very large payments, we would have wiped that fund out much earlier than we did. And we were projected in that last year to empty the fund before the income tax passed. So we would have been in a much worse situation. Services would have been much more dramatically impacted had we not had those two deposits. So it's very important that even though we have our goals, that we continue to move that forward, because when we get in the wrong financial cycle, it's amazing how quickly, when we're trying to keep rec centers open, we don't want to lay off police and fire, and we were able to never do that, lay off police and fire, but it wiped the fund out, and luckily we were able to replenish it. So, if we had a $125 million rainy day fund, I would still not be fully at comfort knowing how quickly we spent that money when it came to protecting core services.
Thank you, Director Bukowski. I don't have any other questions for your budget. I think that it is a good budget for the City of Columbus. It's pretty much a continuation budget. You've added a couple positions, and you continue to reduce costs. So thank you for the presentation this evening. The next presenter will be, I think it's Deputy Director Nikki Brandon from the Department of Development, who will be sharing the Human Services portion of the development budget with us this evening. Good evening, Deputy Director.
Good evening, Chairman Tyson, and thank you for the opportunity to present the Development Department's 2014 budget. I am here on behalf of Director Steve Shoney, who is out of town and regretfully unable to attend this hearing tonight. The Department of Development's general fund proposed budget for 2014 is $23,737,712. The 2014 general fund staffing levels will increase by 12 full-time positions. 9 positions will be added to the code enforcement staff. 1 real estate asset manager will be added to the land redevelopment office. 1 position will be added to manage the department's capital improvement program, and 1 planner 1 position is added to the planning division. The additional code enforcement positions will constitute a new team of code enforcement officers that will be directly involved with proactive code enforcement and targeting very problematic properties and landlords throughout the city. Support for social service agencies will total over $4.9 million, and this is comprised of $3,216,517 in general fund support and nearly $1.7 million in emergency human service funding. Support for the Community Shelter Board and the Rebuilding Lives program will provide level funding of over $4.2 million in 2014, with the majority of that funding coming from the general fund. A budget of over $7.6 million is recommended in the general fund for the Code Enforcement Division in 2014 and will support a staff of 73, 5 of which are assigned to the second shift. So far this year, the Code Enforcement staff has received 27,493 service requests from 311, and from those, they have issued 17,479 notices of violations. Funding of $250,000 is provided from the general fund for the demolition of unsafe structures. $685,000 is included for weed abatement services under the Environmental Nuisance Program. Included in the 2014 general fund budget is a $150,000 line item to maintain land bank properties. This is a general overview of the department's budget. Again, with regard to our social service agencies, the funding has increased by $800,000 and is $4.9 million, again comprised of a combination of the general fund and emergency human service funds. If you have any questions at this time, I am happy to answer them.
Thank you, Deputy Director Brandon. And in terms of the funding for the human service agencies, certainly appreciate the $4.9 million and 1.7 out of the emergency human services funds. And those funds are so important in terms of meeting the needs of the residents in our community. And certainly our community would not be the great place that it is without us supporting those human service agencies. And I'm appreciative that we are now giving the agencies $300,000 more this year out of the budget. I know last year they received another $300,000 to support the pilot program. And I know that there's a lot to do now because there's certainly a lot of needs in our community. And so just appreciate that they've gotten those additional funds. And I know that we are still looking at for not only for the human services, but for the arts and as well as for the Experience Columbus, certainly looking forward to identify other dollars in the future to support the needs of those three organizations. So thank you for sharing that. Also, I know that right now there's level funding, as you just mentioned, for the Community Shelter Board, and I know that they're looking for additional funds, but right at this point, it's level funding to support their needs in the community. I'm very, very pleased. I know we're probably going to have a hearing with Councilmember Klein, but I'm pleased that the administration is certainly focusing on code enforcement in this budget, that having this new eight code officers, right, for the new division. Is it 8 or 9? Is it 8?
There's going to be a supervisor included in there.
Okay.
So there are 7 code officers, 1 supervisor for that area, and there will be a code enforcement manager that's going to be involved in that as well. So there's an addition of 9 staff, 7 of which of code officers, 1 supervisor, and 1 manager.
Thank you. Okay. I want to ask a lot more questions about it. I know we're going to have another hearing just on development, but I just wanted to make sure I commented on the importance of those code enforcement officers. We've had certainly the administration, especially your department, has certainly been listening to the needs of our community and responding in this budget, and so thank you for that. I don't have any questions, just thank you for continuing to support the human service agencies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter will be our Dr. Long from Public Health, and she's our Chief Doc for the City of Columbus, and the floor is yours to present your budget for 2014.
Thank you so much, and good evening, Finance Committee Chair Tyson and colleagues. Thank you so much for this opportunity to highlight the Columbus Public Health's proposed 2014 budget of $28,435,860. As you know firsthand, our Columbus Public Health team has worked hard to keep our community healthy and safe during the many challenges faced by residents in 2013, this year. From the record high infant mortality rates and HIV rates, many disease outbreaks, the ongoing obesity pandemic and food safety, to assuring or improving access to fresh food, to increasing opportunities for physical activity, inspecting 8,000 licensees, and addressing health disparities. We know we've been busy, but we also know we've had an impact, and yet there is still much more to achieve. I believe our ability to protect health and improve lives in our community is more important than ever, and for us, it's our #1 priority. The proposed 2014 budget allows continued provision of public health services that we are mandated, as well as priority programs that the Board of Health deems minimally essential to meet Ohio's public health standards. We will continue to offer services and programs to protect health and improve lives in our clinical health, our family health, our neighborhood health, and our environmental health divisions, as well as the Center for Epidemiology, Preparedness, and Response. New in this budget is funding that provides for home visiting services with the addition of a nurse and social worker, expands women's health services with the addition of a nurse supervisor, which are important incremental projects given our high infant mortality rates. We will continue to be involved and support the work of the Ohio Equity Institute on our south side, as well as the Greater Columbus Infant Mortality Task Force. All, as you know, important community-wide projects given the number of infants that die before their first birthday. This budget will support a new rat assessment team to provide limited assessments of areas affected by increased rat activity at the level of $150,000 and 2 full-time equivalents. In addition, a nurse liaison position is funded to coordinate services between the Columbus City Schools and Columbus-based charter schools, so students can be healthy, ready to learn, and undistracted by pain and medical issues, so that they can, of course, be, as I've said, ready to learn. These funds are proposed to come from the city's commitment to education. Additionally, our budget prioritizes and proposes maintenance of effort in our clinical programming, such as sexual health, immunizations, prenatal care with the expansion I mentioned, as well as our primary care service contract with Columbus Neighborhood Health Centers, which will receive stable funding at the original 2013 level of $4,929,260. Access Health Columbus will also receive stable funding at $25,000, and we will continue to invest $25,000 in community gardens. In summary, in the 2014 budget, the binder document, as I refer to it, the 2013 budget information reflects the mayor's proposed budget for 2013 and not that final budget approved by council. The budget passed by council supported 216.76 full-time equivalents for 2013, and our 2014 proposed budget represents 225.5 full-time equivalents, with an increase of 8.74 positions, not the 15 that were represented in the budget document. All told, when adjusting for all of the changes, the proposed Columbus Public Health budget increases less than 3%. Let me assure you that your investment in our infrastructure, protection, and safety means many things for public health, especially our ability to meet the diverse needs of our community. I can assure you that we will continue to operate with high efficiency and effectiveness to protect the health and improve the lives of all of our residents. And as always, we do appreciate the support and guidance of you and City Council through this process and all year long. I'd, of course, be happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Long, for presenting your 2014 budget, 2014 budget, and certainly appreciate that we're going to continue to have right now the level funding for the Columbus Neighborhood Health Centers, Access Health, and the community gardens. I know that with the opening of the new John Maloney Center, I know that we're going to be evaluating that throughout the year to see if they would need additional funding based upon being a new facility. But I also know that we're certainly looking at funding based upon the changes through the Affordable Care Act. And so we'll make those determinations at a different time. But right now we have the level funding.
I would also note, Council Chair Tyson, we were just meeting actually with Tom Horan of CNHC this afternoon. The other that's really new on the radar screen and was in the morning paper this morning is the expansion, of course, is now open around Medicaid here in Ohio, and that's great news. So yes, the health marketplace, the federal marketplace, but the expansion of the opportunity for Medicaid, I think will also have a big opportunity for the Columbus Neighborhood Health Centers and the other FQHCs.
Thank you, and you're right, that was really good news today and showing that a number of people have signed up already, so that's just great news for the residents here. I mean, you mentioned your expansion, which really focuses around the infant mortality, and certainly we want to continue to make sure that all babies have an opportunity to live out their full potential, and this investment in that particular area supports that. Again, rodent control, I know that that's been a concern within the community, and we're addressing that in the budget. And lastly, the commitment to the school system and our children, and having that nurse liaison working with the community schools, the charter schools, is really going to be helpful for all children have an opportunity to be successful. I also know that last year council put a number of amendments into your budget, and my understanding is those saying that they will be part of the base. They are part of the base budget for 2014. So I'm appreciative of that, because I know that we also put money in for infant mortality last year, and that's still here, and also the obesity, chronic disease prevention program, the men's opiate addiction program, and then the infectious disease. And so I'm glad that that the administration has those in the budget so that we can continue to move forward in helping the individuals in our community that have the different issues and concerns that we were addressing last year. And so other than that, I know your budget's pretty much most of the budgets are pretty much a maintaining budget, except for in these areas where we've identified there is a need that we need to add some special emphasis on, and that's what we just mentioned in your budget. So thank you very much for presenting it, and I don't have any other questions to ask you. I think you guys are all doing a really fantastic job serving the residents of our community, so thank you so very much. We have, I think we have one speaker slip, and I'm going to ask for Ms. Yvonne Honeycutt to please come to the podium. She has 3 minutes to make a presentation. Good evening, Ms. Honeycutt.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Tyson, and what would have been your other members of the council. I come before you amid the celebration of the life and legacy of one of the world's greatest towers of equality, social justice, and freedom, Mr. Nelson Mandela. I draw my inspiration this evening from his leadership as I reflect on the progress and hope for our residents in this great city of Columbus. As the Executive Director of the Human Service Chamber of Franklin County, it is my honor to present on behalf of our increasingly growing association of human service agencies who provide programs and services for more than 200,000 residents and families. Our unique approach allows us to serve the entire community, ranging from food pantries to child care, to health care and housing, mental health, and assisting persons with developmental disabilities, and those requiring workforce training. We are truly one voice in one community, and you will hear more evidence of that in the upcoming budget hearings from our individual members. As local leaders, and you specifically as a chairperson, you have demonstrated individually and collectively unwavering support to and for your constituents, and most recently, new transportation services, the initiative to reduce infant mortality, commitment to veterans and their families, education reform, and increasing access to health care. So it pleases me to acknowledge the most prominent commitment of them all, by which the nonprofit sector continues to thrive. In fiscal year 2013, this council, led by you as chairperson for the Health and Human Service Committee, designated $300,000 to the pilot human service funding programs. This competitive grant opportunity, designed to align human service funding with community needs and improve the lives of working poor and offender reentry programs in our community. In the state of Ohio, the number of inmates dropped by 3% from July 2011 to July 2012, following the implementation of Senate Bill 86, which of course was wrapped into collateral sanction bills as well. And this law helped to divert people from who were already incarcerated to helping them reenter the community successfully. This is very important specifically to Franklin County, because as the third largest county with the greatest number of inmates released from incarceration, we stand at 8.5% of those returning to our communities. These returning citizens need jobs, they need training, they need support, and they need skills to help them successfully get back on track. This is equally true for working population, for those living in low-income settings or in poverty. So Franklin County indicators presently show that 31.5% of residents are identified as low income, and then another 15.1% living in poverty. So the pilot human service funding program not only allowed agencies that have an established relationship with the city to increase their services, but also organizations that do not yet receive funding a chance to secure city support. So I am very proud to acknowledge that 6 of those 7 agencies, those organizations who were funded through this one-time pilot program, are members of the Human Service Chamber of Franklin County and received a total of $290,000. We look forward to the complimentary support of additional $300,000 in fiscal year 2014, or somewhere between an increase of 0.9%. So I offer this to you this evening, Chairwoman Tyson. As a summation of where it all begins, Mr. Nelson Mandela once said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." And I would say to you that members of this Columbus City Council, your leadership, resources, and ongoing support makes the impossible to getting it done. So I thank you on behalf of our 70 human service agencies and the Human Service Chamber of Franklin County, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have for me this evening.
Ms. Honeycutt, first of all, I want to say thank you for coming down, and thank you for your leadership to the Human Service Chamber. I certainly appreciate, even today, as we reflect upon your comments from President Nelson Mandela, and certainly his just caring about everyone and of everyone's needs and concerns, and made a significant difference, obviously, not only in the country of South Africa, but the world. And I've traveled to South Africa and was for a civility conference for President Mandela and President Clinton. And it's very interesting. I mean, you just reflect upon if you've been there and you can see the poverty in that country and understand how people were living, and for the president to say this, we're going to not to be angry about what was going on, and have a thought about reconciliation and love and working together and making sure that individuals have an opportunity to be able to move forward and be successful. And obviously they haven't gotten there yet, because if you look at the pictures, there's still, I mean, it's so much poverty that's still there. But not to have the anger. And if you've ever been there, you would see how you could easily be angry, because you definitely see such a major difference between the haves and the have-nots. But obviously he was made for such a time as this, and so I thank him for that, and thank you for bringing that up in terms of what you're doing, the work that you guys are doing to support our community and the role that the city plays in that. I want to say thank you to, I know I see Dept Christy Angel in the room, Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief of Staff in the room, and I want to say thank you to the Department of Development, as well as to Paul and Dr. Long, because all you guys work together to try to make this community better for the residents that are here. And we do look to you, and as I said to you the other day, we do look to you because the Human Service Chamber does represent, we represent all, but you certainly represent the 31% of the people who live in this community that are low income, and 15% that are in poverty, and to ensure that we don't forget about them and that we provide services to them. And that's what we're talking about here. So I thank you for that. I know you're in favor of these dollars, and certainly these dollars focus this time on poverty and reentry. And so I think your role was to continue to come in and share those numbers with us. I mean, we do know what's going on, we see it, but we also, I think it's important for you to do that. And so we're going to continue to work closely with you and try to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to live out their full potential in this community. So thank you for the work that you do each and every day. And we're happy that we have an additional $300,000 in this budget to be used to support the human service needs. I will also share with you that hopefully within those $300,000, we have to also think about this, that we're going to have emergency needs within those dollars, and we need to have some conversations about how do we support those emergency needs to come up within those same dollars.
And Chair Tyson, I too thank you, and I echo your comments regarding working with the city and the council team members such as Christy Angel and Nikki Brandon from Development, because collectively as a team, it has been this kind of leadership that allows us to move more collaboratively forward on behalf of the least vulnerable among us. And so we too appreciate just the city and the council working hand in hand to make sure that we're looking at what are the emerging trends now and ways that we can better support our families, but projecting forward just as we do with other sectors and benefactors of this community. So thank you.
Thank you so very, very much. Because with those agencies really help people to move forward. I mean, they really do. And so thank you for what you do each and every day. And I really appreciate you. Thank you. Ms. Honeycutt was the only speaker for this evening in support of the budget. And so I want to again thank everyone that's come out tonight to share their budget. And again, I want to thank Paul Rakowski, Deputy Director Nikki Brandon, and Dr. Teresa Long for sharing their budgets this evening. And so with that, I am going to again thank Hosanna and Carl Williams, who work with my staff to make sure that we have great hearings and can do great work for our community. And I also want to thank CTV, because without them we would not be able to have a hearing so that our residents would be able to see it and be a part of our hearings. I also want to say to the residents, if you have any questions or concerns about the 2014 budget, our office is always open, so please feel free to give my office a call at 614-645-2933. And again, I want to thank each of the members of council for the work that they do and the assistance. I saw John Oswald in the audience this evening, who works with Councilmember Klein. I want to say I was glad to see him in here today. And again, we're going to have more hearings the rest of this week on the rest of the budget from the different departments. I want to say thank you to Mike Puckett, who's sitting in the back, who has been working with those human service agencies for such a long time. And lastly, I want to thank each of the residents of our community who work really, who are, without you, we would not be able to do the jobs that we do in the city of Columbus, because you are the reason why the city is a great place. So I want to say thank you to all the residents. The remaining schedule for the proposed 2014 budget are as follows. On tomorrow, the 11th, at 5 p.m., we have a public service hearing and public utilities. The 12th at 5 o'clock, we have administration and veterans affairs. And on the 12th at 6, we have public safety and judiciary. And Tuesday, December 17th, we'll have a 5 p.m. hearing with development, recreation, and parks. And then on the 18th, we'll have public comment on the rest of the budget. So speaker slips will be accepted until 6:30, and the meeting will last until each speaker has an opportunity to speak to this body. And then our plans are on Thursday. Should there be monies at the end of this year, we will have on the 30th of January a budget amendment hearing, and then on February 3rd, we will hopefully have a budget ordinance. We will then table that ordinance and hopefully pass the budget on February 10th. And so with that, I am going to end the hearing and just again mention, if you have any questions or comments regarding this hearing or any other hearing or issue, please contact my office, or I'll go on the website, www.columbuscitycouncil.org/Tyson. And with that, have a safe trip home, and thank you guys for all being here and sharing your budgets. Good evening.